A funeral service for Mrs. Evelyn Raden. If you, family who are here in attendance, if you have a cell phone, I'd ask you kindly to place it into silent mode or turn it completely off at this time. I'd like to welcome everyone via live stream on behalf of the family as well. And services will be conducted by Rabbi Daniel Rabishaw.
Across the morning sky, all the birds are leaving. Ah, how can they know it's time for them to go? Before the winter fire, we'll still be dreaming. I do not count the time. Who knows where the time goes? Who knows where the time goes?
So had we started 5 minutes ago, the sun was shining. It's a beautiful day. But somehow, in the time that we were gathering and getting Evie ready, the clouds came out, and I think that is very telling. You know, I'm going to talk a little bit later, but I spent some good time yesterday with all of you guys, and I was trying to put Evie's life into some sort of understanding, some sort of context. And you guys are going to give a lot of that later, and I am so greatly appreciative of that. But she was a woman, she was a force, she was a personality. She had a huge heart. But no matter how much she gave to others, she always had more for those people who were closest to her. And so I was thinking about that as I was driving home last night. And then last night at my home, we had a fire out in my backyard. And I was looking at the flame, and I was actually thinking of Evie, because my head is filled with all of these wonderful stories and memories and of Bernie. And I looked at the flame. And a flame is a remarkable thing. A flame gives off light. It gives off energy. It fills the space with warmth. But it doesn't really weigh anything. It's just a reaction. But the coolest thing about a flame is that if you take one match and you take another match and you light that other match with the first flame piece, then you have twice as much, and the first one isn't diminished. Evie gave away so much of herself because that's just who she was. Yet, not only was that energy not diminished, somehow along the way it multiplied. She gathered around her the people who she needed to and who needed her to provide that love. Whether it was her whole family, so close, your friends and their families, her constituents and their families, the people that she agreed with, the people that she didn't agree with. And that's something that you can't teach. That's just something that is so innate. And it reminds me that in a lot of ways, that flame of life that exists within all of us, that thing that keeps us going, it's contagious. And so today, is we're a sad moment. We're saying goodbye to someone that we love, but it's also a celebration of life and of light. And even though the sun isn't shining as brightly right now because of the clouds, Evie is shining brightly. And that's going to brighten all of us. And so our tradition says that we come to this place, which is not an easy place to be. You look around and there are a lot of folks here. This is an old cemetery. But when we do, we give honor to a community of people who have been doing these kinds of rituals for hundreds and hundreds of years. And Evie may not have been all about the God stuff in Judaism, as Bernie has made very clear to me. But you know what? The community stuff of community Judaism is what got her going, right? And this is what that's about, being here, being among people, being among tradition, being among life and loss and others people's celebrations and your own. And so I think this is an appropriate place for us to be, and it's appropriate for it to be a little cloudy. On each of your shirts, many of you have a ribbon, and the ribbon is actually a symbol. Way back when people would hear of a death, they would actually tear their clothes. And we don't do that anymore. We live in different worlds. But we wear this ribbon as a symbol of that tearing. So if you would, for a moment, just take it and just give it a little tear. You could probably tear it up from the middle. Again, it's just it's a self-tearing ribbon.
How far should it go?
Just a little bit more. Yeah, that's good.
Again, symbols. We tear on the outside because we feel torn on the inside. And we look and we see the outside world, and we know that the outside world looks at us, and we are feeling a little torn. And that's how people are going to see us for a little while. But the great thing is that we find time to mend, not just time to rip. And that's all part of what this celebration is about. Death has taken our beloved Evie. Our friends grieve in their darkened world. In their silence, there is lamentation. In their tears, there is loneliness. Lost in their sorrow, may they find the presence of loving friends who are not just here, but all over. Be with them and help them. Help them get through these days. For Evie's love that united us in life, and which death cannot sever. For her companionship that we shared along life's path, which continues through the tenderness of memory. For the gifts of her heart and mind, and her spirit and her energy. For all of those things that gave us life. For all of those things we are grateful. And today we're going to give thanks. So there are a lot of different readings. And I was telling Theo and Levi yesterday that, they said, well, what's the funeral going to be? And I said, we're going to read a couple prayers. We're going to do a couple things. But really, the meat of what we do here is what you all bring to it. And there is a beautiful reading from the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes was a guy who was sad a lot. He kind of saw the human condition, and he noticed not just the good stuff, but the stuff that made life difficult. And so he wrote this, and I think you might recognize it, and I think you might resonate with it. For everything there is a season, a time for every experience under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to discard, and a time to tear, and a time to sow. A time to keep silence and a time to speak. You've had lots of quiet times, although I suspect that in this particular household it wasn't always so quiet. And I suspect also that Abby frequently got the last word. Or let me put it this way, availed herself of the opportunity to try to get the last word, knowing that she lived with some very strong personalities as well. But you know what? You guys get the last word today. So, because for you it's time to speak. And so, Bernie, we're going to have you come up first to say what you would like to say about your beautiful wife. Please.
Hi, folks. To the people here, to the friends around Chicago, to the people around the country, maybe Iron in Israel, Jerry in Maui. I was feeling okay, in quotes, until I saw the picture of Evie, and then I got tearful a couple minutes ago. So I very well may get emotional while I'm reading. This was written late last night, nonstop, so it's just one stream of consciousness, graciously typed up by my daughter-in-law, Karen. The kids knowing that I'll come in with papers and, oh yeah. So here it is organized. I'm going to discuss I decided that if I became tearful, I would stop talking. I'm going to discuss a loving relationship that went on for more than 60 years, 59 in marriage. Evie and I met in South Haven, Michigan in the summer of 1958. I was working in a resort and went to the nighttime hangout of Jewish kids from Chicago and Detroit. Sitting on a ping pong table was a pretty blonde girl in shorts and a halter with a Mamie Van Doren haircut, surrounded by a group of guys. The blonde girl came up to me and asked for a light. We introduced ourselves and I found her to be sweet and upbeat. I asked her if she wanted to go to the beach and she said yes. When we got there, she lit up a cigarette and threw her match absent-mindedly on the grass, which lit up in flames. I put the fire out and said to her, "This proves you're hot stuff." And we both laughed. I went off to the University of Illinois, and a year later, a girl I knew came up to me and asked if I would like to go out with Evie Sherman. I thought and I remembered, oh yeah, I remember her from South Haven, and I of course said yes. The per roommate was made to sit in the student union at 8 a.m. for a week to meet me on my way to class. Thus, the odyssey with Evie and myself began. I was welcomed by her caring mother and good-hearted father and younger brother into the family. I remember the snowy winter night. We were walking, and I looked at her and said to myself that I loved her. I still have the memory of her wearing the perfume, white shoulders, that night. We married, and I went to graduate school, and Evie worked in a hospital. There, I saw the kind of grit she had when she wouldn't kill a rabbit for a pregnancy test. Amazingly, she didn't get fired. I saw the kind of resolve she had when it came to asserting her beliefs. When Tony was born, he had serious medical issues. Evie forever has my admiration for the devotion, warmth, and goodwill she gave to him during this time. I love him so much, she would say. That love and devotion was shown again 3 years later when Lisa was born prematurely. Lisa would not take a bottle from the nurses, requiring Evie to go back to the hospital every 4 hours so Lisa could survive. I want to emphasize that Evie was an extremely caring and giving person. She was a very popular person in Evanston. Her good-naturedness and generous spirit were contagious. Our kids' friends were welcome to the house, which became a haven for many of them. I remember when Lisa called from Madison and asked if she could come with friends for the weekend. We said sure, and the next day, 12 kids came into the house with sleeping bags. This isn't written. I remember going up to Evie and saying to her, I think we need more cereal. Evie became an extraordinarily gifted community leader in Evanston. The intelligence, grit, and concern for people permeated her accomplishments. Tony will discuss this at length. I have to mention her cooking. She had a wonderful way with food. Her chicken soup was legendary. Not only was food good, but there also was lots of it. The last 6 years have been very difficult for the family and Delilah. We've banded together to give Evie the care she deserved and the dignity she deserved. She said to me many times in recent weeks, I am lucky to have married you, to which I replied, likewise. Here is when I was going to mention, who knows where the time goes with our favorite song, but you heard that before. Indeed, who knows where the time goes.
Thank you, Bernie. Lisa, did you want to come on?
Immortality, a poem by Mary Elizabeth Fry. Do not stand by my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on the snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn's rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in canceled flight. I am the day transcending night. I am the soft star that shines at night. Do not stand by my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die.
Everybody take a deep breath. Okay. Ready, Tony? All right. I'm here if you need. Okay.
Okay. Whew. Okay. So over the years, my mother gave a clear directive to Lisa and me. that when she died, she wanted there to be a joyful celebration with laughter and storytelling, and ideally with as much raunchiness as possible. Our commitment to her and to those who love her is to hold a celebratory event at some point in the future when we all can come together to share memories and stories about her remarkable life. But that's not what's happening today during the pandemic. We're all still feeling the sadness of the loss. So I've been asked to speak on behalf of Lisa and the family, but these words and thoughts are definitely sprinkled with observations from all of us. And I apologize in advance for the length. My mother was raised in Chicago's Albany Park in a modest neighborhood comprised largely of first and second generation Jewish immigrants. Her family had little material wealth, but abundant emotional warmth, generosity, and laughter. Her extraordinary parents, Max and Mary, were an almost perfect counterpoint. Her gentleness and generosity counterbalanced his outrageousness and brashness. Food was a focal point, and my grandmother's legendary meals imprinted in my mother deep-seated, almost unconscious beliefs about the nexus of food, family, and social connections. Her parents also modeled invaluable lessons for her and Mark about our innate capacity to give of oneself to others. When they befriended children living in different circumstances, as they often did, their humble little third-floor apartment was instantly offered up as a new home, an emotional sanctuary. Mark occasionally awoke to find multiple teenage girls sleeping in the bed they shared. Throughout her childhood, her parents instilled in her the crucial importance of community, kindness, social justice, and from her father at least, the joy and freedom of embracing openness, spontaneity, and outright outrageousness. By her teens, she had the outward appearance of a glamorous 1950s platinum blonde beauty queen, but bubbling inside was a rebellious free spirit ready to burst. In 1958, she met a handsome young man who was quite different than most of the other boys of the era. Smart, introspective, with a cool swagger and a mysterious air, a lover of classical music and jazz, he also was an orphan and had no money to speak of. I think he represented a different and more exciting path for the future, and someone she sensed would always love and protect her. They fell in love and began a deeply devoted relationship that, as you heard, spanned 59 years. The early years together were filled with great friendships that have endured through the decades in abundant music. They saw many of the greats of the era, even discovering a little-known folk singer in a small club in New York who would later change his name to Dylan. My mother dressed like a hippie and longed to be Janis Joplin or Tina Turner, two of her all-time favorites. What would blossom the most during those years were deeply held social and political convictions that would become a through line during her life. They moved from Lincoln Park to a lovely apartment near the lake in Evanston. My father was still in graduate school when they decided to start a family. And when her son was born with a mangled leg, and she was informed by distressed doctors that he would never walk, she proclaimed at the hospital this was the happiest day of her life. She rejected that prognosis and dedicated herself to creating a different outcome for her boy. She and my father spent years navigating complex systems and conflicting recommendations, determined to figure out the right medical course of action. And through multiple surgeries, in an era before hospitals began to institute family-friendly policies, those administrators and bureaucrats quickly learned that whatever the rules may be, it was futile to tell her that she'd ever have to leave her child's side. And as you heard from my father, she was equally consumed with Lisa's prematurity and respiratory issues. Our mother loved our old eclectic Victorian home, and she was never happy than when it was surrounded by youthful energy and laughter. She was completely devoted to our family. An outrageously fun and wacky mom, she relished in embarrassing us. She also took Lisa and me, and often our friends, to rock concerts, blues clubs, wildly inappropriately movies that occasionally traumatized us, but mostly we loved, and all sorts of other venues and events where we were typically the only children. While other kids were eating macaroni and cheese, she was taking us regularly to ethnic restaurants across Chicago. Our shared love of spicy Asian food was cultivated by her adventurous spirit. Throughout our childhood and well into our post-college years, our home became the essential meeting place for all of our friends. And for many, she became a surrogate mother figure whose rare, emotive warmth, insight, and love sustained or transformed them. A fabulous cook, nothing gave her more joy than she was hosting one of her legendary dinners or parties. She was spontaneous, joyous, with a naughty, often profane side, who was always up for adventure or fun. A rotating cast of cultural, political, and social leaders and friends from Evanston and Chicago beyond were constantly streaming through our home. Fiercely loyal, if a friend was ever sick, she'd be at the door within hours with a giant pot of her exceptional chicken soup. Few people have ever had more truly close and beloved friends. Before we turn to politics, I should probably touch briefly on a couple of her more noteworthy qualities. She had a tendency to maybe be a little excessive at times. More accurately, she only knew how to do anything and everything to excess. For every single meal that she ever made or ordered, there was 3 times, 5 times, 10 times more food that could possibly be consumed. She'd return from stores, estate sales, any type of sale, with the car full of God knows what that we'd rarely ever need. When my kids were young, I literally had to beg and plead with the owner of an Evanston toy store to cut her off before our family, drowning in her massive daily gifts, lost our sanity. Well, as anyone who knew her can attest, she wasn't much of a cleaner, which is, of course, quite the understatement. In response to her mother's immaculate home and fastidious ways, she took what could have been a brief adolescent rebellion and then turned it instead into a lifelong determination to never really clear much of anything else again. The clutter in our home was the stuff of legends. Lisa and I went through periods where we looked to the world like unruly feral children. In fact, it wasn't until I went off to college and observed my dorm mates that I realized that there were vast patterns of cleanliness and cleaning, like washing sheets, that I'd never been exposed to. And to my father's everlasting dismay, she enforced her own personal rule, as all her friends can attest, that she was entitled to grab any check, to pay for any meal with whomever and wherever she wanted. And she ate out a lot and ordered a lot, with lots of people. She even insisted that this rule would apply to a lunch she had with the man from a rather well-off family who would later become our current governor. When we were young, my mother most certainly had no intent to enter politics. She'd been active in the civil rights movement and a crusader for women's rights. Demonstrations, rallies, political marches, and campaigns were constant parts of our childhood. She had me in a stroller at the protests at the '69 convention, and my sister and I once marched next to many celebrities at the front of a massive ERA rally in Chicago. But when the longtime alderwoman of the ward, 4th Ward, decided to step down, she asked my mother to enter the race to replace her. Her first instinct was to decline, and she only relented when she realized that a stealth Republican would be the likely winner. I still remember her first debate, which was held at the gym at the Robert Crown Center. Her voice quivered, her hands trembled. Her obvious fear and unease made the 13-year-old me want to intervene to end this risky venture to protect her. But in the days and weeks that followed, something shifted significantly and profoundly inside her. The next time I saw her talk before a crowd, she spoke extemporaneously, assertively, with what would become her trademark directness and humor. She joined the city council at a historic moment when a new form of political conservatism was taking hold in the country. She immediately leaped into action as a vibrant, articulate voice for progressivism and equality. The rebel in her loved standing up to powerful forces and institutions. If I recall correctly, I think one of her earliest actions was to get Evanston to formally condemn and push back against the slashing of social programs in DC. At times it seemed like much of the progressive politics of Evanston of that era were plotted at our kitchen table, where she spent innumerable hours on the phone every day, ranting and scheming with her many co-conspirators. Hecky, Jack, Ann, Bruce, Liz, the other Ann, to name just a few. She loved solving problems for her constituents, but the quality that set her apart was her absolute refusal to remain quiet when she thought regular people were being harmed by political decisions or by destructive policies or systems. She was fearless in speaking out and battling for change. She'd argue, cajole, and probably just wear people down with her tenacity. And she was always willing to go it alone when she felt it was necessary to speak truth to power, or she would say, to tell people they're full of shit. She didn't suffer fools gladly, and I'm certain many opponents, and occasionally some friends and allies, didn't appreciate being told directly to their face that some of their ideas or positions were disgusting, to use her frequent put-down. One longtime observer of the Evanston political scene told me that she had the most creative and effective political instincts he's ever seen. What resonated so much with her constituents and made her so effective during those years was the unmistakable passion, conviction, and heart that she brought to everything. Those who may have disagreed with her on certain issues couldn't deny that she was always prepared, that her beliefs emanated directly from her values and integrity. At a tribute and roast held in her honor after she decided to not run for re-election, one state legislator noted, "Evelyn has fought for what she believes in, and in doing so, many people have come to believe the things she believes." She always cared, and she always kept it real. Despite her larger-than-life personality and presence, my mother was exceedingly humble, reflexively dismissing or downplaying almost any accomplishment. So I'll make a couple statements I know she would never utter. She had a deep and lasting impact on the city through her tireless work and advocacy for the many issues she championed. As just one example, there are now generations of youth whose lives have been transformed through the remarkable work of organizations she helped to guide, launch, or sustain. She changed the discourse in the city and shaped its direction through her fearlessness, her disarming authenticity, the allies she recruited and nurtured over the years, and the power of her personality and ideas. She had a deep and profound love for Evanston. what it was and what she knew it could be. In Evanston, flags are flying at half-mast today in honor of her contributions. I'm sure she'd have a wise crack to say about that honor, but I also know she'd be deeply touched. After she stepped down from the council, she continued to be involved in numerous local, state, and national campaigns and policy debates, sometimes formally and sometimes behind the scenes. There's a whole world of friends, organizers, and politicians who came to view her as a trusted and visionary political advisor. And for decades, she remained a bold, colorful presence, literally and figuratively, throughout the city. Our mom lived for and loved her family ferociously, as well as her extended family of friends across the world. There are far too many of them to name, but you all know who you are. She and Mark shared a unique and special bond from childhood, and Holly became the beloved sister and confidant she never had. I can assert with confidence that no woman has ever longed for grandchildren more than she did. For more than a decade, she kept an entire closet full of clothes, toys, and books she planned to give to an eventual grandchild. And of course, she made sure to hedge her bets by covering all potential genders. When Karen and I started dating, she urged us incessantly to get pregnant as soon as possible. When we explained that we needed to first actually get married and then wait several years so Karen could make it through a demanding residency program, she told us not to worry, that she'd gladly step in to help raise the babies. Needless to say, her grandchildren, Theo and Levi, became the overwhelming joys of her life. They adored their Baba, basking in her warmth, generosity, and of course, loving all the swear words that she regularly taught them. These last years have been exceedingly difficult as her physical and cognitive capacities declined. For everyone who loved her, it was excruciating to see such a vibrant spirit lose her autonomy. My father dedicated himself completely to her care and well-being. And all of us will forever be grateful to Delilah, who showered her with deep love and devotion and enabled her to remain in the home that she adored until the very end. And there's certainly never been a daughter-in-law who gave of herself more profoundly to a mother-in-law. My mother was a remarkable woman who lived a remarkable life. She lived honestly, boldly, vibrantly, with a rare warmth and radiating generosity. I know that she instilled qualities and values that fundamentally shaped who my sister and I have become. But she touched more people and impacted more lives than she ever understood. Her essence will now reverberate through the countless memories and stories that will be shared and cherished through generations. Goodbye, Mom.
That was beautiful. All of the words have been beautiful. So, at the end of the day, right? I like the story, by the way, of her throwing her match out there. That should have been your first clue she starts fires. Right?
Started firing me.
Yeah, evidently. And not just in you. But that flame that the two of you had really did spread. remarkable be to your kids and your grandkids. It's remarkable. Mark, I can't imagine what it was like growing up with her as a sister. Did you get the clean gene, by the way? Did you get the clean gene, by the way?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, well,
Oh, yes.
it just speaks to the conservation of the clean gene. Somewhere it's got to go.
You know, went all to all of it.
You know, so we think about all of these things, and at the end of the day, Evie was a mom. She was a wife. She was a baba. She was a friend. All of the rest of it came from that. All of it. She was an alderwoman. She was a leader. She was an organizer. She was a pot stirrer, a flamethrower. She was a nudger. Probably not so nudgy. It was probably really not so much of a little. It was like a big poke. Yes, a Zetz. She was a Zetzer. But again, at the end of the day, she was just a person who was trying to do what she needed to do in this world to be unique and authentic to herself. There's a lot that you can say about people, but when someone who really has unbelievable potential can live on her own terms and can bring people together even in death, can make the world a better place for her having been there. Wow. I hope that for all of us, that when it's our time, we can turn around and say we made the impact. We did 1/10 of what she did. And if we can do that, then I think we're doing okay, which tells you how truly remarkable she was. I don't have to tell you how remarkable she was, you know it. And I know that Theo and Levi, who are the grandchildren, right? All hail the grandchildren, right? They are the source, as you said, the source of her strength. But they get strength from her too. So you guys, we're gonna do something, share music. Is this new to you? By the way, these two young men may look young in age, but they are ancient souls, both of them, and profoundly beautiful souls. And they hate the fact that I'm talking about them in front of them. But I suspect that when we look to what they accomplish, as I look to everything you've accomplished, that you're going to see a big, bright Evie coming out from their hearts as well. Guys.
Music was a form of self-expression to her. It represented her abundance of love, her radiant spirit, the essence of her was her music almost. It completed her. But as her life in these last 6 years, as it became almost mundane to the fact of her illness and her dementia, her music was an anecdote to her past. And the night before she died, my dad was with her, and she couldn't move, she couldn't walk, she couldn't even think fully. But he played the song, Me and Bobby McGee, and he's always loved Janis Joplin. I mean, she's always loved her to a great extent, and she couldn't dance, so she's tapped her finger like this to the beat of the song. And it was a little anecdote to her liveliness, her spirit, and the past.
Also, this was the last song that she heard. So.
Busted flat in Baton Rouge, waiting for a train, and I was feeling near as faded as my jeans. Bobby thumbed a diesel down just before it rained and rode us all the way to New Orleans. I pulled my harpoon and my dirty red bandana. I was playing soft while Bobby sang the blues. Windshield wipers slapping time, I was holding Bobby's hand. We sang every song that Javi knew. Freedom was just another word for nothing left to lose. next to mine. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Nothing. That's all that Bobby left me. But if feeling good was easy down when he sang the blues, and feeling good was good enough for me. Good enough for me and my Bobby, yeah.
Perfect, guys. That was great. And what you said was beautiful. And you're welcome. And thank you for your politeness. And, you know, again, so the world kind of goes around, right? And we always kind of circle back. And if you think about where you're, what do they call you? What do you call this guy? Pops. Papa and Baba. There's always someone with a phone. So these guys really worked hard to make the world better, and they handed that torch down, and you guys are going to pick that up, I suspect, and do great things, both of you. So tradition is about doing things that others did because they did them, and in a good way, right? There's some prayers that we're going to say. The next prayer we're going to say is just to ask God for mercy. Say, we are grateful for who we have had in our lives. And the interesting thing about this next prayer is that even if none of you were here, we'd still say it, because this is for Evie. And so we're going to say this prayer, and then we're going to lower the casket, and then we'll have an opportunity to say the Kaddish at the end. So if you would all please rise. El Malay Rachamim Shochein Bamromim Hamitzei Minucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei HaShechina Im Kedoshim Uteorim Kazohar Harakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Evi Raden Shalcha L'Olama Bal Harachamim Yastirei Habeseter Kanafav L'Olamim Vayitzror Bitzror HaChaim Et Nishmata Adonai Hu Nachalata V'Tanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava V'Nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Evelyn Raden, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in your eternal presence and in the shadow of your wings. And let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance, may she rest in peace. Amen. We're going to take a few minutes and lower the casket. You guys can be seated if you like. right, guys, we're almost there. So the last part of the service is a prayer called the Kaddish. And if you read the words, it's very God-focused. But I'm going to tell you where I find strength in the words. When my grandfather, of blessed memory, came over to this country, much like Abby's father came over alone on a boat and tried to figure it out. He came over as an Orthodox Jew. He lived in this neighborhood not too far. And, you know, when I was a growing up child, I always believed that, you know, I was a bit of a rebel. I'm sure they find, those of you who know me, find that strange. And I told my grandfather I didn't believe in God. And what he told me was, you know, there's a couple things I want you to do in a cemetery. He said, always wear one of these. And then he said, always say the Kaddish for the people that you're there to see. And I said, but I don't believe. He said, the Kaddish is about saying something that hundreds of generations of Jews have been saying. He said, it's about linking yourself with who they were and who they are, and that informs who you are. He said it with a nice Czechoslovakian accent. I could barely understand him at the time, but I'm imagining that's what he said. So I think that there's strength in saying prayers. Even if you don't believe, it's not always about that. It's about connection. Evie was about connection. Evie was about community. And in a lot of ways, building community was her religion. And she dedicated herself to it. So we rise and we say the Kaddish together. It's on this. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah be'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayeh d'chol beit Yisrael v'agalah u'v'zman kari v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam u'almei almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh V'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shmei dekudesha barichu. Le'elamin kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlam araba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the one who makes peace in all of this world, which somehow has become so elusive, find a way to bring peace on Evie, bring peace on all of you, and on the rest of us as well. Amen. So our final thing is to take some shovels and to shovel dirt. And this is, and you could put the roses on there as well. So if you're comfortable, again, it's something that we do that others can't do back for us, and it's the ultimate gift. Thank you all very much. Thank you all for being a part of this service, those of you who have called in.
This does conclude the service at the graveside. I'd also like to thank everyone on behalf of the family for attending via live stream. Also on the website, if you'd like to leave a message for the family, you can do that. Type it in. There's a place on the website there. And also if you'd like a verbal or a video message, you can also leave them that as well. The family would like to invite everyone, if you'd like to stop by the residents of 1223 Elmwood in Evanston from 3 until 7 today. The family would like visitors to just stop by and offer their condolences if you feel so. On behalf of the family, thank you. This does conclude the service.